Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 5th season, we are looking at Joe Johnston's 2011 film, Captain America, The First Avenger. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast. Pete will be back next week. Today, we're talking about Minute 43, which begins with Steve taking the plunge and ends with Steve checking himself out. Joining us on the show today is, again, the team from the Timeline Scavengers podcast, Colin, Parker, and James Anderson. Hello, you two.
Hey.
Hello.
Man, I've never noticed my arms are just, wow. Oh, sorry. What's on?
It's easy to be distracted.
These guns are still loaded.
I totally understand.
He's like, you ran out of bullets, but these never run out.
I will never run out of these bullets, baby.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, we learned the answer to the question that we had last week. The fact that Steve can swim. Apparently, they just decided, you know what, that line isn't going to help us. He clearly knows how to swim because he can catch up to a submarine. Not only can he catch up to a car running on the road, he can catch up to a submarine swimming under the water.
That's right.
It's pretty impressive work. I don't know. How does this play for the two of you with Steve's dive and then chasing the submarine?
This scene, so the car thing, okay, I kind of get, right? Because again, they claim that the fastest that he can run is 30 miles per hour, which is just a little faster than Usain Bolt. And again, in a busy city, maybe that can work, right? The fastest German submarine in World War II could go 8.7 miles per hour when submerged. The world record swimming speed in the world currently is held by David Holmes Edgar at 5.05 miles per hour, which means that Steve essentially had to double that, which I feel like is even crazier than the running. And then punches a window underwater. Like now we're really getting into some like James talking about the double jump. This is some real video game style, work here.
And let's also remember, he's swimming after a submarine and I know it's not like a rear propeller that is propelling it. It's got these side propellers on it. So maybe he's swimming like right between the jet stream created by those. But still, like that is something else that he also has to work against, is the force of the propulsion from those on the water.
But what we have to remember is that he's very strong.
Oh, okay, so, right. You're right. I forgot this was Captain America.
You're right.
I thought this was just Steve Rogers' movie.
He's
no.
quite strong, and
so he can move the water.
Is really gonna.
Is that what it is?
Exactly. Yeah. The water also is very patriotic, so it just sort of gets out of the way. Oh, sorry.
The water must also know that he's a German spy and is slowing him down then, right?
Exactly, right. Like right. In Spider-Man.
This is New York water, let's remember.
Right, exactly, yeah. He had the brake on. He forgot to,
Why won't this go any faster? He forgot to
him punching the window is right. He just is sitting there like, what is happening? He was not paying attention during that training day. Him punching the window out, followed by, not to jump ahead, the human toss out of the water, are so like they're so very far-fetched and 100% perfect for the feel we're going for in this movie. 100% perfect. Yeah, he punched through the window. He's quite strong. He probably had his fist in an aerodynamic way that his very smart brain was like, if you punch like that, that window's doing nothing, It's like that guy walking through the door, like that plate glass thing. He's like, head, hip thing, you're done. It's just gotta know how to do it. So it works for me.
In the script, it actually takes him a much longer time to smash through the window. He actually hits it time after time after time. The glass finally spiderwebs, and then water pours in as the glass shatters. I guess by this point in the chase, I feel like, you know what? It's okay. I don't need to go through all that. Make it fast and it will be fine. I guess I'm at that point with this chase where it's just like, he's going to get the guy anyway. Let's just have him get the guy and not worry about all the possible actual realities going on with a submarine in the river,
If you told this story via word of mouth from witnesses. And the witnesses were like, he was leaping. He was jumping over 3 cars at a time. I watched him jump over. I watched him take a fence. It was an 8-foot fence. I watched it happen. This kid standing on the dock, shivering, in some sort of Brooklyn towel or whatever. He's like, yeah. And then he punched the window in one punch and just tossed him up on the dock. It was amazing. I think that would be fantastic and also would solve put everything under the background of unreliable narrator or exciting storyteller. Then it doesn't matter, and it becomes even more like this is a legend among men.
What I love about what you were just doing here is you basically turned this whole movie into Big Fish, where Captain America, like, this is the version of Captain America's
nasty cop
life. Yeah, right. It all ties together. This is what he really wanted it to all be like. And then I tossed the guy out like he was nothing. Yeah.
He's that old man at the end of Endgame the whole time.
Yeah.
He's just telling these stories.
And he's telling like some kid sitting at a park next to him.
Then I had to go back in time and return the gems.
Yeah. And he's waiting for Sam Wilson to come back. So he's just sitting there telling Harvey Keener the story. And he's like, I've been here for so long. Why am I so
Then I got Thor's hammer and I said, Avengers.
Like, he's like, what's that? Assemble. Why didn't you say it louder? What? Why didn't you say it louder? Anyway, so then
here's a shield.
Yeah. But can I ask a question to you, James? Do you think that he threw him out of the water from underwater?
Why would I think otherwise? He was underwater.
Because, like,
then he was out of the water. Because
kind of like other scenes that we've talked about where you cut out like a few seconds so that you don't watch the very long, like them swimming all the way to the top of the water. He very clearly is like hand on the ladder, reaching down, throw up, and then climb.
Now that does solve the timing problem of he tosses him up from underwater and then doesn't even look where he lands and starts climbing up the ladder. If he's already kind of surfaced and is already up the ladder,
he knows that he's just throwing him straight in front of himself.
I don't like that as much, though.
But it's not as fun to you?
Right. So in reality, yeah, he did that. And he really probably just lugged him up over sort of like...
Oh, gotcha. He actually just dragged him the whole time.
Yeah.
He never threw him.
But, because it's the most cartoony thing, I think, in this whole movie is the body flying up and being like, huh. It makes me laugh.
Well, with Captain America, there's a lot of moving through the air, whether it's him or other people involved because of him. It turns into something that I guess becomes almost one of the elements that becomes part of anytime you're doing a superhero movie. You've got to throw a guy, and this is that chance. Yeah,
you got to do it. Yeah. How else will people know that you're very, very strong?
Right.
And they lean on that a lot in this movie.
Because he doesn't have any like visible like power. Like he can't shoot lasers out of his. I mean, he does, but like
he does shoot lasers.
He does not. He does have he does have powers, but they are like I can punch super hard or think real good.
We talked about this a lot last week. The fact that Steve is kind of designed to look like a normal person. Like we're never really meant to think, oh, this is the guy who has blue eyes. Like actually in the script, when he gets the super soldier serum and you've got that shot of his face when his eyes open big, they were going to actually turn his eyes blue. And thank God they didn't, because it would have been like, what is he now, the Blue Hulk? Like, it would have been a weird thing to do.
Well, but it would have been Aryanizing him.
Yeah.
Well, it's just
like he's Ubermensching.
Yeah,
he's,
so
like
it's very
he's
strange.
Already that. But.
So they've chosen to not do anything like that with him, and even diminishing like all those skills, like the super hearing and the super seeing and the things that he can do in the comics. They really just made it. He's just strong. He's strong. He's got incredible stamina, and he's a hell of an artist. Yeah.
Morals.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. All that stuff. Hell of an artist.
That's true.
The French film where he just like, he spends some time in Paris just drawing Hydra.
Right.
the Paris years.
He drew every single one of those bases, by the way. They were like, could we just put them on the map? He's like, hang on, I have to show you exactly. The sconce on this one is beautiful. And they're like, Steve, we are on a timeline.
Come on, buddy.
And Peggy's like, let him work.
Right.
Would you like to see the angry or the nasty cod?
Yeah.
I could draw that too.
Draw me, Steve. Draw me like one of your French bases.
Yeah, Phillips keeps trying to hound him, and she's like, leave my boyfriend. I leave Captain Rogers alone. And he's like, what's that? Nothing. Keep going. He's like,
Just
okay,
keep going.
that's crazy. I wish he liked me.
All right. So,
Yeah.
so Kruger gets tossed up by Steve. However it happens, he gets tossed up onto the pier. This is, you can see the building right behind it here. This is the Titanic Hotel. This whole thing is the stand-in for this New York pier that we're on. But yeah, that you can see the hotel right across the way there, which is kind of cool. It's nice to think that like there's so much of a history with the Titanic all in this area, but you would never know that.
And I didn't even remember that we were talking about the Titanic before when I made that amazing Titanic graph like 2 seconds ago. So that's just the kind of podcast energy I bring. It's my invisible superpower.
Right. But you telegraph it. You don't make it subtle.
Right. I'm like, here comes a man out of the water. There he is.
It's just there.
But I think it's fun because like then he gets up there too, and he begins to peer pressure him into giving him some answers. Yes, that was a joke. Just for you, James.
Yeah. He's a
peer. So it's peer 13 pressure is really what we're getting here.
Right. Yeah. Yes, it's the luckiest kind of peer pressure. Right.
Yeah, peer 13 pressure. The 13 is in the brackets, to say like this was like left out, but it's there.
Right. Yeah, it's like a journalistic implication.
Well, let's talk about, Kruger has, he's been shot by Agent Carter. He had a car accident where he rolled a number of times and has a big gash on his forehead. He just nearly, I don't know. I'd like to think maybe he nearly drowned, but Steve, managed to pull him out. Steve tosses, and then he was tossed out, from the water to the pier. And he still has the energy and the gumption to pull a knife out and start slashing at Steve, who, of course, knees him in the chest. And this is what finally sends Kruger down. I feel like, do you think that maybe this was actually a great person to send? Like, it seems like this guy could have gotten away with it. I mean, if it wasn't for you pesky kids, I mean, he really did an admirable job of whatever it was that Schmidt had sent him to do. I guess he sent him to what? To kill
Erskine and get the super soldier serum.
The super soldier serum. So, of course, neither of them notice that the vial gets smashed, but we do lose the vial here. And
also, adding on to those injuries, when he lands hard on his back, and I feel like there's no way his head didn't smash into the concrete in that moment.
He lands on his front. You mean right here?
Oh, he does? Oh, I thought he lands on his back for some reason.
Yeah, no, he comes down he belly flops onto it. Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, you're right, because he comes up like that. Yeah.
He's traveling so fast it air dries him because he's not.
Yeah, he's not dripping wet
anymore.
Neither Steve. Yeah.
Neither is Steve. Steve shook himself like a dog. It was that's one of his skills.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, forget what I said about him landing on his back, because for some reason in my head he clearly landed and then has to scramble to get up, but now I'm seeing it again in my mind's eye and I'm going, yeah, no, I remember that wrong. But still, he's just getting tossed around, and I feel like normally most people would be like, all right, you got me. All right.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm getting out of this. But the fact that he continues to be like, all right, fine. Now it's knife time. You're like, all right, listen, he's like, the lighters didn't work. The gun didn't work. Maybe this one will.
He's the Steve Rogers of Hydra.
Yeah.
He's a Hydra Terminator is what he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can do this all day, unless I
die.
To a certain point, and then
I have a tooth.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, okay.
Steve Rogers on both sides.
There's so many Steve Rogers here. So he is going to kill himself. Before he bites his cyanide capsule, let's talk a little bit about this whole Hydra thing. He says, when Steve says, "Who the hell are you?" He says, "The first of many. Cut off one head, 2 more shall take its place. Hail Hydra." This is the first time we're hearing this, and if you look at the Hydra logo, it as we talked about at the very beginning of this show, it makes no sense because it's a skull with an octopus tentacles, 6 tentacles. It's not a skull with a whole bunch of other skulls on necks, which seems like it should be. I don't know. What do you think of the Hydra branding? Let's talk about that first. Do you like the logo, and does the logo work while representing Hydra?
When I was a kid, we had this pillow the joke was that the cow was dead and feet were up in the air, and it said like everything's going great. But we had these cleaners that didn't speak English. They couldn't read the pillow, so they always put it so that the cow appeared to be standing on the ground. I think that whoever drew the like skull on the octopus head had the thing upside down, and the tentacles were originally supposed to be Hydra heads, and they're like, draw the skulls on the Hydra heads, but they got it, and they're like, oh, it's like an octopus. I got it. Draw a skull right here, and they're like,
well,
all right, fine, whatever.
And Feige was like, great, and they're like, oh, but with the, but we don't have the. It's fine.
I think that the whole thing about Hydra and like what they're kind of going for there is it's not the actual like think of the Hercules Disney film, right? When he fights Hydra and he literally does cut off the head and two come up, right?
Yeah.
It's the thing is that like both in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is canon or not canon, who knows? In What If, which is definitely canon, just different universe, things like that, even in the comics, there is a creature that they are basing this logo off of, which does not grow another head, but it has just endless tentacles. But like, what sounds more intimidating? Cut off one tentacle and two more shall take its place. Or
but why
cut off one head, right? Because in this instance, like they themselves are the limb, and to them,
But come up with a different catchphrase. If you're not going to do, because the Hydra did do that.
Well, yeah, and that's where it gets confusing, because is there a different Hydra that you were talking about, the one that has the tons of tentacles?
So the creature...
That's the Kraken.
Well, no, but I mean, like, it is the creature that they base all of their logos and stuff like that off of. It depends on the universe that you look at, but like in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Hive is this thing that has a bunch of tentacles, and like it is a thing that... The reason I think where they kind of come up with this name or idea of is that every time he, quote unquote, dies, he then is able to inhabit some other entity. So it's like he always kind of comes back, which is where this idea sort of comes from. But then also within What If and everything like that, they have this champion, this creature that is also, I believe, just called Hydra, if I'm not mistaken, at least in the What If zone world or whatever. And like when they open this gateway, there's just thousands of tentacles that come out and you never see the head of the creature. And then she keeps slicing off limbs and they just sort of fall to the ground. And then it's like, okay, cool. Here's a few more for you to tangle with. So, I mean, their logo doesn't, the logo to the title or not title, the like slogan doesn't exactly make sense, but it is, honestly, it's a pretty good logo though. I mean, it looks pretty cool.
Yeah. It's fantastic. I love the way that they came up with it, and it is a super cool logo.
I think the skull is also Red Skull too, though, right? Like in this instance, like because he's kind of, I mean, it existed before them technically, but like
there is like Nazi, pins that have a skull and like almost a skull and crossbones sort of look. So I mean, it does feel very much like they kind of pulled it from elements of Nazi designs. But yeah, and the fact that it ties into Red Skull, I don't know how intentional that was, but it certainly feels like it all kind of comes from the same, period of time. They said, let's design this Hydra thing is cool. You've got a Red Skull. Let's put that skull on there. Let's have a bunch of tentacles. Like it feels like you can see them workshopping this.
I don't know if Colin, you did the research on this or what when we did our thing. I'd never looked this up before. They were originally called the Brotherhood of the Spear, and then they renamed themselves after this monster, the Lernian Hydra, which is a spawn of the Titan Typhon and the snake goddess Echidna. It has all this whole big thing. Of course, this isn't until 1985 they were retconning this, but like, I like the idea that they were like, because I saw a thing that was like, they called themselves the Beast, or they were called the Beast for a long time. And then it was like, they have tentacles in every part of like, they have in like private sector and government and all this stuff, tentacles there, but they're also like, heads of government. And so that multi heads becomes the thing. if we're breaking sort of the fiction of it, it feels like in the 40s they forgot what was what and what was the other thing. But like I like the idea that it's just like, I don't know, this is kind of creepy. There's tentacles, but they're also heads, all this stuff. But the Hydra is named after this actual thing that is on the Marvel Wiki, which is kind of cool. That is the same one that Hercules fought. Apparently.
Right. And there's a lot of really cool stuff too. Like if you ever look up like the evolution of the Hydra logo within MCU specifically, I think is pretty interesting because they show how things shifted and changed throughout time. So initially their logo, which I don't think in MCU they ever used the beast. But their original logo was basically the head of a sacrificial ram. And then they had one where it got a little bit more like intricate and kind of like almost like demonic. But then essentially the coin was flipped because they would have this thing where it gets like a little bit messed up and you realize that it looks now kind of like there's a skull at the bottom of it. And then they sort of redesign it when Red Skull comes into power, and the skull itself is supposed to, especially because they turn it into red and black, which was not their original coloration. They then kind of, it ends up sort of replicating the literal Red Skull. And then they specifically lean into the Hydra creature by changing how the tentacles appear to remind us of the Hydra's heads, as if the tentacles could also be like the necks, essentially, of this thing, which I think is, and it all leads up to one head that is kind of like in charge or whatever.
That feels like a lot of people over time trying to come up with exactly what we're talking about right now. Like, how does this actually make any sense?
The Marvel Wiki has a hilarious last piece of trivia that is all the, like it says, Hydra is a pastiche of the would-be world conquerors of Spectre from the James Bond franchise. Itself influenced the creation of several... Hydra influenced the creation of Cobra, the death cult Cobra with a K from DC Comics, all this stuff where it's like, hey, there's lots of organizations that have monsters as mascots, and here's this list. I love that kind of stuff on a wiki where it's like, here's a list of stuff, like influences and influence.
But the thing that you're getting at too, Andy, is that I think that's kind of also the interesting factor of organizations, especially secret ones that last for very long periods of time, is that like as new people come into power, or as they get discovered and like factions die off or new ones take their place, like new meanings or new ideals sort of get added on, and like they kind of shift things into this new, like their new self kind of thing, like almost like they are, unironically kind of being like new year, new me, like, here's what Hydra is now. And like, as someone new steps into power, they go, okay, cool, this is all great, but how can I make it just a little bit more about me and like how I want these things to run? And so like in this era, you have Red Skull, and like they are all 100% on board with his vision and his idea of world domination.
There's a really interesting German film called the Baader-Meinhof Complex. Came out in 2008.
Yeah, I heard of that recently, and I feel like it's coming up all the time.
That's kind of what it's about. It starts off in the 60s, and it's about this like a far left terrorists in Germany, but it follows them over like I think it's a decade, and you see how what they're going for initially evolves so much. So by the time the people who started it, like, get out of prison and come back, it is something so much darker and more menacing than they had ever set out to do. Yeah. And but it came from the same thinking. It's just it evolved in a different way because of other people who were leading at the time. And it is kind of that same thing with this, where it's like, people who were leading it, and they would come up with these things like, it's like this Hydra, cut off one head, two more shall take its place. And I'm sure somebody's like, no, that's not what we were doing with the Hydra.
Yeah.
But they're all still like, Hail Hydra.
Yeah. It's called the Baader-Meinhof Complex.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
That's so, like, because, like, the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon is that thing where it's like, I read about this thing and now I see it absolutely everywhere. Because it's named after the two psychologists who did it, or it's named after, like, I don't remember. But, like, it's the thing of, like, when you start looking for like the number 23, when you start looking for the number 23 and stuff, you see the number 23 everywhere because your brain is now attuned to seeing that. So I wonder what that has. Now I want to see that movie just to be like, interesting. Why'd you call it that? Cool. So I'm going to have to check that out.
Well, and they were known as the Baader-Meinhof group. So I don't know. I would need to look more into it. But yeah, you're probably thinking of the Baader-Meinhof effect.
Oh, effect. Okay.
Which is it's the frequency illusion
right.
thing. Yeah.
Got it.
It's all very interesting. It's all
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And also the let's call it boldness, let's call it hubris of being like, that thing? I'm going to name it after myself. That's a James Anderson effect right there.
Well, okay, so we've been talking a lot about kind of this whole moment with the Hydra and stuff, but the moment ends with Kruger popping out one of his teeth and clamping down on it because it is, in fact, a cyanide capsule. What do you two know about cyanide capsules in teeth?
Well, I did a little bit of research on before because I was like, is that a thing? And there's this cool Atlas Obscura article from 2018 about it. But before that, I found a blog from trustdentalcare.com that says much of the same information. And I think that is the most hilarious, amazing thing. They're like, all right, Trust Dental Care, blog post of the day, cyanide teeth. Let's get into it. Basically, the conclusion that Atlas Obscura comes to is they'd have to be so huge they would look ridiculous and they wouldn't fit in your mouth. To get the amount of cyanide like in a capsule that would kill you, it's too big. But they said there are actual people that would put in the temple of their glasses, which I think it's funny because Kruger has glasses, right? So doesn't he?
Yeah.
Or does Fred Clemson has glasses?
Yeah. Fred Clemson had glasses. Yeah. He's since lost.
But so like there are places, ends of pens also had cyanide capsules in them, but teeth they're like, no, which I think is good because what if you bit into something particularly hard and
like an apple,
oh no, that apple, boy, that was sure a rough apple for James because he straight up died. And I'm like, oh, my tooth.
We talked earlier. This is a joke I've been sitting on for ages. I apologize. But
Colin, my expectations are sky high.
Great. Then this will go perfect. My favorite part about this cyanide pill, right, is that he just gets beaten up at every single turn. And he knows that it's time to give in.
Okay.
And he knows that it's time because it's 2:30.
Gotcha. That's the dentist time. I like that. That's good.
There you go.
I thought you were going to go for like an I'll be CNU.
Oh, see, yeah, that's also good.
Because CN is the abbreviation for cyanide. It's the chemical joke. But you said the other thing.
Didn't say it was actually going to be a good joke. I just earlier, I was like, okay, he's beat up. He does the thing. He's hurting. Okay, 2:30. Great. I'll find a time to throw that out.
You've heard that joke before, right? Okay,
I didn't make it up. I'm just saying.
Did you organically come to 2:30?
No. That would be
That's amazing,
wouldn't it? If I was like somehow so dumb that I just stumbled into it.
All right, well, tell the joke now, because I don't know if I know the joke.
Oh, what's a dentist's favorite time?
And it's 2:30.
2:30.
2:30. Right, 2:30.
Yeah.
2:30, right. Yes.
I like the idea that all of his teeth are cyanide, and he just got the one that was knocked loose by Captain America punching him.
Is that like, this is like the guy who has multiples of everything. He's got all of these lighters. He's got all of these cyanide capsules in case he needs to pass them around to a group of people or something.
This is, Colin, we've designed this villain for anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
Heinz backup plan Kruger.
Because, he gets punched and like, it's really weird that it doesn't get really knocked, but like, he like just takes it out with his tongue, which I feel like he's got a strong tongue.
He doesn't get punched. He gets kneed in the chest.
Does he never get punched whatsoever?
No, he goes through a car accident and everything, but he gets shot. No one ever gets close to him. The first time anyone gets close to him is when Steve grabs him. I mean, technically, I guess his fist in the window. He
just punches the window and he pulls him. Because in my head, I was like, he definitely like gets up in there, but I realize now.
Rips the lid off. Yeah.
It's like the water pressure, like it was like a water pick, it loosened the tooth. Yeah, for sure. That's
do you guys know much about like cyanide death? Is this something that you've heard much about?
Yeah.
Because, it was a thing. There were people. It wasn't teeth, but, there were people during World War II. It's very famous. there was a guy here. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. There was a guy, Michael Marin. I don't know if you recall this. Back in 2012, he was, I can't remember what. I think he was a real estate guy who was committing arson, and he was burning down. I think he burned down his own house, trying to get insurance for it. And he was found guilty and faced like he was going to be convicted. And as soon as they said that, like it was like up to 21 years in prison. As soon as they said that, suddenly he put something in his mouth, drank some water, fell to the floor and was convulsing, and they took him to the hospital and he was dead. He had ingested cyanide. That I didn't know people actually like were still doing that. I don't know why it seemed like something that happened back in the World War II era.
Yeah.
But I was really surprised that like right then in 2012, this guy in court here in town killed himself by ingesting cyanide.
Does Phoenix have incredibly draconian arson or insurance fraud laws? Like what's...
There was a period here in town where a lot of arson was happening, like a lot of properties were getting burned down for, for real estate and stuff. And well, for real estate and for growth, people were trying, like there were environmental terrorists who were burning new properties down and all that stuff.
Right. So they're like draw and quarter them.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. We all would go out and cheer as they would
exactly.
Pull all their limbs off. Yeah. 4 horses.
A Phoenix horse race, they used to call it.
But like this guy was just trying to say that it was a cigarette, but like we know that it was for the insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a Wonder Years reference.
That one's
that's
for
good.
James.
That's good, Colin. That's a Wonder Years the band. Yeah. It's a lyrics.
Okay.
I know that from chemistry. I am a chemistry major. That it basically cyanide prevents your body from being able to take in oxygen, and like you basically, I think, suffocate in your own whole deal. I used to test for cyanide at my environmental lab, and you would have to make sure you did it in the hood because it was cyanide. But like, it's tough because you have like standards that you have to put in to make sure you're testing it right and stuff. So it's like, okay, I guess I'll take this bit of cyanide and pour it in a little bit. So
wow, that's
wear gloves.
Yeah.
Howard Stark says wear your lab coat. So,
but don't bother with safety glasses like everyone else wears.
Because like, what's the glass gonna do? Break? Who's behind the glass? Captain America? I don't think so.
I don't think so. All right. Well, this minute ends. We've got, a dead Hydra spy lying on the pier. We've got a great shot then of Steve Rogers. I was going to call him Chris Rogers, of Steve Rogers, as he finally notices himself and realizes, I did all this. Like, he finally realizes how strong he is. I love that we've got a little CG Statue of Liberty far, far in the distance. It's nice to kind of like get that little nod that, we are here, supposedly in New York, looking from Brooklyn over to the Statue of Liberty.
France famous for making things that establish location. The Statue of Liberty.
That's exactly what they do. Yeah, Statue of Liberty and Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, Leaning Tower of Pisa and the Hollywood sign. All these things.
They made the Hollywood sign?
All these things come from France.
Yeah. Le Hollywood, they called it.
All right. Well, this is where our minute ends with Steve checking himself out, realizing his powers. Any last thoughts from either of you about this minute?
That's it.
All right. Well, remind everybody about your podcast and where they can find more about you and what you two are up to on your network.
Absolutely. So we are part of Timeline Scavengers, which is a podcast that is designed to last forever. It's a show where we go through the MCU in historical order, scene by scene, until the end of time. Currently, we are also going through Captain America. So just kind of a great little chance to meet up here in the middle. And we are also part of a podcast network called the Scavengers Network, which is host to a variety of other shows. Some of them also media and like rewatch type situations. But then there's also things like actual plays. There are music podcasts. There is a show that is, I mean, again, it's still media, but there's something kind of about, murder mystery. So like a little bit of like text and also visual things. Not that text isn't visual, but I mean like TVs and movies, TV shows and movies. And then again, you have our show. So a good little variety of stuff over at the Scavengers Network and Timeline Scavengers.
Excellent. We've got the link for for all sorts of stuff from them over in our show notes. So just check that out. You can follow them and learn more about all the podcasts they do, see what they're doing on Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. And we will be back tomorrow to talk about Minute 44 right here on the Marvel Movie Minute. So until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Spread the News by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, consider doing that for this show.